comrades. My name is Yanis Iqbal, and I am an independent researcher and freelance writer based in Aligarh, India. Today, I am going to talk about the relevance of Antonio Gramsci's texts for the present day formulations of leftist strategies. In his famous prison notebooks, Gramsci once wrote, "In the East, the state was everything. Civil society was primordial and gelatinous. In the West, there was a proper relationship between state and civil society, and when the state trembled, a sturdy structure of civil society was at once revealed." So, in this passage, Gramsci affirms the existence of a strong state form in the West that includes, importantly, the multiple articulations and mediations of a mature civil society. The real subsumption of society under capital in the West provides the basis for social cohesiveness. This may be a result of the mediating role of representative institutions or the more abstract and general phenomena of what is called social democratization, that is, juridical equality that allows increased national, political, and economic participation. In the East, by contrast, the state lacks the complex defensive trenches that a developed and articulated civil society can provide to the state in the West, and which helps to resist the immediate eruption of conflicts in the sphere of production into the political terrain. Put it in other words, the developed civil society of the West does not allow particular struggles to take the form of a general struggle against capitalism. Gramsci's differentiation of state-civil society relations in the East and the West have been used by reformist thinkers and most prominently Eurocommunists for obviously non-revolutionary aims. These reformists have asserted that to the extent as the Western state was based largely in the civil society, capitalism could be slowly weakened through cultural and parliamentary struggles against the bourgeois class's hegemony. Thus, Nikos Poulantzas was writing about his hopes of building democratic footholds in the capitalist state in the 1970s in Europe, when labor was relatively strong and social democratic parties seemed to be able to take over the administrations of different Western European countries. Nevertheless, Poulantzas' hopes never materialized. The reformist reformulations of the prison notebooks are aided by a selective reading. According to Gramsci, the Western bourgeois' full-fledged articulation of a hegemonic project reproduces itself at the institutional level in the form of a new apparatus, the integral state. The state is no longer an intermittent entity in daily life. Instead, it percolates into the pores of society, and Gramsci identifies civil society closely with the consent given by the great masses of the population to the general direction imposed on social life by the dominant fundamental group. So, civil society is the sphere where the ruling class has obtained consent from the subaltern population. In addition to civil society, there also exists a political society comprising the apparatus of state coercive power which legally enforces discipline on those groups who do not consent either actively or passively to the norms of the ruling class. As Gramsci further notes, this apparatus is however constituted for the whole of society in anticipation of moments of crisis of command direction when spontaneous consent has failed. Thus, the integral state equals political society plus civil society. In other words, hegemony protected by the armor of coercion. Here, we can understand that the distinctions between civil society and political society are merely methodological. In reality, both the components of the integral state exist as dialectical movements in a wider fundamental unity. As is evident, hegemony, unlike reformist conceptions, only constitutes the social basis of power in the state, and the state here is conceived in a limited sense as governmental apparatus. When expressed in terms of dialectical unity of the integral state, dominance in political society depends upon a class's ideological capacities in civil society. Given the earthworks and trenches that exist in the West, a class that aspires to be hegemonic must pass through the different yet unified movements of civil and political hegemony before reconstituting the state. And this reconstitution, this radical reconfiguration of state, is the final war of maneuver, preceded by the war of position in the civil society. When the integral state is understood in all its dialectical richness and comprehensiveness, civil society becomes the terrain upon which social classes compete for social and political leadership over other social classes. Such hegemony is, however, guaranteed in the ultimate instance by the capture of legal monopoly of violence embodied in the institutions of political society, that is, the governmental apparatus. Hence, the political society is itself a condensation of the social forces in civil society. The state apparatus of the bourgeois can be defeated only when the proletariat has deprived it of its social basis through the construction of an alternative hegemonic narrative and its concretization in a corresponding hegemonic apparatus. Contemporary reformists deny the indispensability of the latter, that is, the construction of alternative apparatus of political society. Hence, we need to see hegemony as a way of amalgamating social forces into political power. The exercise of hegemony, initially done within the civil society, must also have a substantive effect upon political society, because political society itself is integrally intertwined with civil society and its social forces as their mediated higher forms. In fact, any attempt for the attainment of hegemony within civil society has to progress towards political hegemony in order to maintain itself as such. By now, it should be obvious that Gramsci posits no deep-seated differences between the East and the West as far as the state form goes. Despite any ease of access to political power on one side of the divide, there is still, to use Gramsci's phrase, that intense labor of criticism which needs to be carried out in any historical process of intellectual and moral reform. Hegemony needs to be molded in a manner that reaches popular consciousness. Any conquering of a gelatinous state in the East needs to be followed by this work, by this labor of criticism. Thus, different historical formations are at different levels in terms of their development of civil society. These formations purely differ in the quality of the relationship between state and civil society. Now, the types of the state-civil society linkages depend crucially upon material apparatus, and this is with regards to the West. In the West, the general form of the representative state deprives the working class of the idea of socialism as a different kind of state. The bourgeois state abstracts the population from its class divisions, representing individuals as equal citizens. It presents to men and women their unequal positions in civil society as if they were equal in the state. Parliament, elected every 4 or 5 years as the sovereign expression of popular will, reflects the fictive unity of the nation back to the masses as if it were their own self-government. Thus, the juridical parity between exploiters and exploited conceals the complete separation and non-participation of the masses in the work of Parliament. The belief in equality of all citizens, that is, in the absence of a ruling class produced by the institutions of parliamentary representation, is the structure of consent found in a developed capitalist society in the West. Since parliamentary apparatuses are themselves responsible for the preservation of capitalist society, a democratic road to socialism ends up reinforcing the ideology of bourgeois democracy. Hence, socialism will require not the uncritical takeover of the existing state apparatuses, but their dismantlement through the cultivation of new institutions of grassroots popular democratic power. This revolutionary perspective is commonly described as dual power strategy because it promotes new centers of popular power outside of and in opposition to the apparatuses of the old state, of the capitalist bourgeois state. But such a revolutionary position is ignored by present day reformists who neglect the conjoined and dialectical status of civil society and political society.